I think we made it. Sorry about the delay, guys. I am so fortunate here today to be with Ari Meisel, world, leading best selling author and graduate of Harvard Wharton Business School and at the University of Pennsylvania, who is an expert on doing less and getting more out of your life. And we're so thrilled he's here. This is one of our Burnout Breakthrough series live streams. So thrilled that you're here. Everybody, please start a watch party if you can. Try to get your friends on, put it on Facebook, put it on all your social media channels, and we can really get a lot of people that we can help. At jeffmoody.com, our goal is to help people with their burnout and to kind of break through and get to the other side. So I guess first question I would have for Ari today is, his whole mojo, his whole website, and a lot of what he works on is based around something called less doing. So Ari, could you explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, of course. So it's not actually about necessarily doing less, which is a lot of times people sort of reverse them. It's about doing less of the things that really don't fit into your zone of genius, or the things that you're really best at. And there's a whole framework that I've created, which is optimize, automate, and outsource to basically all the stuff that you're not amazing at. And the thing is that entrepreneurs and doctors who are also entrepreneurs are really amazing at coming up with innovative ideas and new ways of doing things, but also tend to be their own worst enemies. And it's a lot of times where the burnout sort of happens.
Okay. What, I guess, did you ever feel like you were burned out, and what some of the genesis for what, kind of stimulated you down this path for your life?
Yeah. So I was working in construction in real estate development in upstate New York in a very big project that I was running, and it was just a lot of stress. I was living a very, very unhealthy lifestyle and working like 18-hour days. So, 18-hour days, I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, which was just, sort of par for the course, eating a lot of fast food, drinking, not sleeping very much, so all of the sort of disastrous things. I was also 20 years old. And by the time I was 23, I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So obviously I don't have to explain what that is to everybody.
Right.
But I basically found myself in a situation where I could no longer work 18 hours a day. I could barely work an hour a day. And I had these two sort of parallel journeys. One was overcoming the illness, which I was able to do. I was able to actually get off my meds, and I went on to compete in Ironman France, and haven't had any symptoms in a decade now. But the other thing was that if you are presented with this situation where you can only work an hour a day, the question at that point really isn't about what would you do, it's what wouldn't you do, right? And if the things that you wouldn't do still have to get done, then who or what is going to do them for you? So somehow out of that, I created a new system of productivity, which really runs very counterintuitively to what a lot of people have learned and do when it comes to productivity.
Because I think that, from a doctor standpoint, doctors in general, I think pretty smart bunch of people, but also I think the big thing is we're just work harder, work longer, work harder, whatever, you're always the doctor is always seen as kind of the captain of the ship. You're responsible for everything. So then I think in our minds, we think only we can do it. I mean, clearly, I think for a paradigm shift, I think for a lot of doctors would be like, let's turn that on its head and have people help us, have the system help us. The way I kind of think of what doctors should do is we should only do what only we can do, and then everything else should be outsourced. So I guess, the typical doctor is such a it's such a solitary endeavor, getting into medical school, getting through medical school, getting through residency. It's always about being the tough, hardworking person, and be relied upon. You let people down. You don't have to rely on anybody else. And I feel like, I guess, what's one, where would you, if I was a burned out doctor, what's the first thing you would tell me to try to attack that kind of mentality?
Yeah. So, and one thing I just want to give a little bit of context. So I'm an EMT and have been for nearly 9 years now, and I've been very active, especially in this past year with COVID and everything. And so I have a lot of respect for what doctors do, and I also see a lot of that side of things in the work that I do. So there's a few different sort of conflicting issues when it comes to medical practices that I've seen, and I've seen everything from like surgeons to med spas to chiropractors, like you name it. I mean, I've worked with pretty much like every kind of doctor in every industry there is in my practice. So the less doing was really sort of the personal productivity methodology, and that turned into a business-focused methodology, which we call the replaceable founder. And the idea is to make everybody in the business, including you, as replaceable as possible. And we don't want to replace you, but we want to make you replaceable. And that idea that like only I can do it, and everything sort of falls on me, is a mindset issue. So there's all sorts of amazing technology and cool tools that I could probably tell you about in the next 20 minutes. But ultimately, there really is this sort of mindset shift that needs to take place, where you have to think about, how can I replace myself in this either large or very, very small activity that I'm doing? So I'll give a very, very specific and very practical example. So I see this more often with dentists than with doctors for some reason, but I'm sure that plenty of doctors do this as well. A lot of the dentists that I've worked with all seem to have picked up this habit that at the end of the night, they call all the patients from the day just to see how they're doing, right?
Yep.
And surgeons will do that too, of course, but for some reason I see that as like a really consistent thing with dentists. And they might have had 8, 10, 12 patients that day, depends on what it was. And the typical conversation is like, well, so how many calls do you make on an average night? And dentists might say 10. You say, and how many of those go to voicemail? 10 usually, 9 or 10. And how many of them end up calling you back? 0. So, but it's nice that they get but from a customer care point of view, customer journey and bedside manner, right, it's nice that they got the call. So that is actually something that we can automate in about 10 minutes and still keep it very personal. So for anybody listening, there is a service called Sly Broadcast.
SLY?
SLY.
Okay,
and
great.
You can pre-record voicemails, and it's what's called ringless voicemail delivery. So it doesn't ring their phone, it just shows up immediately as a voicemail. And you can send that voicemail to one person or 50 people with the push of a button. So can your staff. So we have a coaching program, so we'll have dentists that are in our program, and they'll record a dozen, different sort of things like that. And then they just have their staff just, sort of cycle through and send them out as they need to. And they never have to touch it again. It produces the exact same result. And it's a massive, time savings that they don't have to deal with. I mean, that one thing alone, one dentist we work with, I think he told me it saved him like 6 hours a week.
Oh my God. Well, and the same thing happens with physicians. I think less with dentists because maybe they're not as married to these as we are, but electronic medical records are a nightmare. I don't know how much interaction you end up having with those as an EMT, but same thing with ours, they become kind of a necessary evil. I'm a little disappointed in the amount of progress that they've made in making them better. But what I ended up doing with my electronic medical record, we have to create these notes every day. So I have one of my medical assistants do that instead of me doing that. And that saves me about 20 or 30 minutes a day. That took 15 minutes to set up, and it saves me 30 times, 200, it saves me 100 hours a year, So that's a very small thing. And clearly, you're an expert at this, but I think there are more and more physicians, I think in general, are used to doing it the way that it's always been done. There's definitely innovation, but the wheels turn very slowly. And I think sometimes it's difficult to get physicians to think out of the box or to think out of their box at what else they can do from a business process standpoint or from an efficiency standpoint, because they're kind of, this is the way that it was always done, and this is the way I was taught, and that's the way I'm going to do it for the next 40 years. So
I think, it's sort of ingrained at so many levels in so many doctors, that whole adage of, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, unless you're talking to like a cosmetic surgeon, that's very different. But for most part, like doctors don't want to create more problems than they already kind of have to deal with. So yeah, it is absolutely it's a symptom of the sort of historic cultural nature of becoming a doctor.
And I think the other thing that a lot of physicians say is like, if I want it done right, I'm going to do it myself. You know, they're very lone rangerish, you know, kind of a mentality. And I think that, you know, I'm sure in your programs, I'm actually about halfway through or a good way through this. Ari's first program is called Overwhelmology, which I love that name because I love like calling it what it is. And I think that's a big issue for most physicians. They're just like overwhelmed. And that's one of the cool things is you're getting these ideas and ways to think of things. One of the questions I did have for you about overwhelmology, though, you're very intent on tracking time and seeing where we spend our time and maybe batching jobs and doing things in an efficient manner. One of the things, at least for me, I'm a urologist, I'm a surgeon, we have a lot of variability in our time, in our day. Like if I'm on call, an emergency comes up now that like blows 3 hours, you know, a hole out of the middle of my day. And so I didn't know if you've had solutions for those types of issues where the day is a little variable, kind of, and out of your control, I guess, out of our control a little bit. So,
well, again, EMT, right? So like, I get it. And I had a patient, by the way, last week, that an 84-year-old man who pulled out his own Foley catheter.
Oh yeah, that gets exciting. We fixed that problem. So
yeah,
yeah.
Fortunately, he was demented and didn't realize what was happening. But anyway, so yes. So the number one tool, the number one defense against variability, is asynchronous communication.
Okay.
So so let me.
Okay, what do you mean
by
it? What is it? Yeah. What does that mean?
So what we're doing right now is synchronous, right? And if you got on the phone with somebody, you're meeting with a patient face-to-face, that's synchronous communications live. Asynchronous is the opposite. And a lot of you listening are using asynchronous tools right now, but you're probably not using them in an asynchronous manner. So a great example of that is text messages and email. So a text message is asynchronous, right? Because I can send it when I want. The person on the other end can read it whenever they want. They can respond when they want, and so on and so forth. But a lot of people they send the text message, right? And then they sit and they wait and they watch the 3 dots go, right? And then it's the opposite of how it's supposed to be. But there's so many tools at our disposal that allow you to communicate in an asynchronous fashion. So one of the best tools, one of the best productivity communication tools that exists is a tool called Voxer. So it's VOXER.
Okay.
And essentially it works like a walkie-talkie. And so and there are other apps that do something similar, but there's some key differences, which I'll explain. So, you know, you can send a voice message on iMessage. You can send a voice message through WhatsApp. There's tons of other tools like that.
Oh, we had a little bit of a freeze there. Oh, you back?
Voxer is the only one that allows you to listen.
Okay. Oh.
To a pre-recorded message,
okay,
or listen to it. Yeah, it's the only one that allows you to listen to things in a pre-recorded fashion as well as live. So with something like Voxer or WhatsApp, if you want to try to let me in on my phone, maybe that'll be a little better. We can try that.
Okay. You know, you're so good. I want to have 2 of you at the same time. That's how good you are.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So with like WhatsApp, for example, you send a message, and then it has to upload. The person on the other end has to download it, and then they have to listen to it and respond. With Voxer, within 0.2 seconds of me starting to talk, the person on the other end can start to listen if they want to. Now, if they're not available for that, they can listen to it later whenever they want, and you can listen to it at 2, 3, or 4 times speed. So I communicate just about exclusively asynchronously with my entire team that works with me, all of my coaching clients, and even potential new sales prospects. I'll basically say, like, look, you know, one of the benefits that some of my higher end clients get is unlimited Voxer access to me. So they could send me a message, you know, at 2 a.m. their time, and I can get back to them 4 or 5 hours later, but it still feels very fluid.
Right.
And the same thing with my team. I have a distributed team that's in 2 different countries, 4 different states. And we go so far as to have an asynchronous daily huddle. So basically, a message pops up in our group chat, and it's like, what are you working on today, team? What's the biggest challenge? And all 5 of us will check in, and it might take 20 minutes or it could take 4 hours, but we're all getting on the same page that way. So ultimately, with asynchronous communication, you're enabling people to communicate at their best. And that unpredictability aspect, I could literally like get an ambulance call, and while I'm walking to the ambulance, like I can send a 30-second message that puts things in motion and allows somebody to keep doing what they're doing.
Right.
If they respond to that, then I can deal with that, as soon as I transfer care of the patient, for example, if I have 2 minutes while we're deconning the stretcher. So the more that you can do asynchronously, the more you can get done, and you can batch things also, because if I walk out of a meeting and I've got 10 Voxer messages that, let's say they're each 30 seconds each, whatever, right? So it's 5 minutes of audio. I can take 5 minutes to respond to all 5 of those. And essentially I've had 10 conversations in the course of 10 minutes.
Right. So it's just much more efficient, and it's under your control.
Exactly. And if you're in a team setting, you're really allowing them to work at their best as well.
And that's an app, or that's a service, or both?
It's an app. It is a free app that works on every platform.
Cool. Do you do much text-based or interaction with your teams? Because I love an app called Otter. People will transcribe things, and I'm a faster reader sometimes than I am a verbal communicator. So I'd rather read and respond rather than listen and respond, or unless I can listen at 1.5 or 2 times X or something like that.
Yeah. So first of all, Voxer actually does have built-in transcription for messages. Okay. You can listen at 2, 3, and 4 times speed, but Otter is amazing. And I don't know if you're aware, but Otter now does live transcription of Zoom calls.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll turn on like another device and transcribe what we're talking about. But that's very cool. That's very cool. I guess what would you say is the number one recommendation you would give to our audience right now? Like, come to your website, have a paradigm shift, stand on their head. I don't know. What's the best way to start with you?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly, like, we have some really great programs for this, and we've worked with several doctors. And as you're going through one of our programs right now, and obviously, fortunately, you're finding it valuable. So people can go to lessdoing.com and find out more about what we do. There's a bunch of free downloads and things about it, but also the Replaceable Founder book, which is really sort of comprehensive look at how to approach the system and really look at your communications, your project management, and your processes, which are the 3 main areas that we see most businesses lacking in. And keeping in mind that I've worked with several dozen doctors at this point. So like this is really applicable stuff, and it's things that you can do fairly quickly to make big changes.
Although I can tell you, like, communication and processes, those words, like, doctors hear those and they just like bounce off their head. Like that's like not what we spent 20 years learning, So it's difficult sometimes for us to process what that means, But I think it really just means being more aware and being more efficient with things that can, I kind of say, leverage your time and leverage leverage, there's only one you. So you need some help scaling and leveraging you and your time.
Yeah. I mean, any time that any of you find yourself sort of saying, like, if I only had more time, it's never going to work. Right. And that's the sort of situation where it's like, it's time to start optimizing what you do, automating a lot of it, which there's so much that can be automated now that you probably haven't even considered, and then outsourcing or delegating the rest. And on average, the people that we work with save about 10 hours a week, so if you just imagine what you could do with that.
I was, I think it takes about 40 hours to learn how to fly a plane. It takes about, I think, 400 hours to learn how to learn the new language. So like basically you learn how to fly a plane and learn a new language in a year with that, with that amount of time. It's amazing. Okay, exactly. So I have one last question for you, because I want to be respectful of your time. On your web, you have this picture on your bio. So I had to ask, since clearly it looks like a superhero, What is your superpower, Ari Meisel?
Well, just to be clear, so that was an album cover of a band called Rage Against the Machine 20,
Oh yeah.
20 years ago. Yeah. So that was the album cover of the album Evil Empire. It was a painting that was done of me by an artist, and they found it and they liked it. So that was really fun when I was 15. So yeah, my superpower, honestly, I think is the best I can describe it is connecting the dots. I'm really good at taking what seems like really disparate information and what a lot of times people think is very unique elements of their business, and putting some very interesting solutions together that really change the way they operate.
Cool. Cool. Well, I really, really thank you for your time. I absolutely appreciate everything. Everybody should go to lessdoing.com. Check it out. Ari is amazing. He's a world renowned. There's lots of levels of expertise that you can access there in services, and all in service of obviously getting your burnout under control. So jeffmoody.com, jeffmoodymd.com. Come check it out. Look at these live streams. These are all recorded. Get my book. The book's coming out in a couple of weeks. So very excited for that. And we're so thrilled that Ari could spend the time with us. So thanks very much. And we'll see you next time on Burnout Breakthroughs. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.